want to wish everybody happy Ag Week since I'm thinking of this as the whole week as opposed to just yesterday. So happy Ag Week. Again, my name is Mike Hermel. I'm the CEO of a company called Vortex. And so I really appreciate being here. And if you have any questions, I'll try to keep this short because time is a little bit limited. So who is Vortex? Vortex is an early stage company. We're focusing on design and manufacturing of eco-friendly electric track off-road vehicles for industrial applications. And what we're looking at is for vehicles for agriculture, public safety, handicap accessible, and recreational applications. So those are kind of the target markets that we're going after. And since this is an electric track vehicle, it's a green electric track vehicle, which since it's green, we're focused on a small carbon footprint, but really emphasis is a safe operation. And then this design, as you can see on the bottom here, is kind of a skateboard sort of concept, what they call in the automotive industry. So a skateboard means that everything is contained in the base unit. This particular product that we're looking at has a flat top and could be sold by itself, whereas usually skateboard designs have to have an application around it. But this could be sold as is, or as I show next, it can have different applications on it. But before I get into that, I want to talk briefly. Each application for any kind of product has its pros and its cons. So not listing the pros here for different ag implements, just focusing on issues, particularly the lack of utility and performance when time matters. That's really key for us, trying to get something up and running quickly and reliably, and those kind of focuses. So what are a few problems that we've identified? Basically, in a gas vehicle, they really have, the internal combustion engine really does not have a lot of low-end torque. They require high RPMs to really pull any loads. And to me, it would make a lot of sense to have vehicles that would have that torque all the way from a low speed up to whatever speed you want to go. And then additionally, the single point of failure for dedicated equipment. A lot of the industry has focused, particularly in the ag region, a lot of particular components or equipment have very, very large. You buy one single unit. It's a very large, very, very expensive piece of equipment. You likely may only have one of those. And if there was ever a single point of failure on it, you are shut down until you get that fixed. It could be a very simple thing, but if it's back ordered somewhere, that piece of equipment could be shut down for weeks or possibly even months, depending on how difficult it is to get that component. If you could go to smaller equipment and multiple equipment, that could alleviate that. But why is a large dedicated equipment important today? Because you have an operator, and his costs of operating that equipment is the same whether it's a smaller piece of equipment or if it's a huge piece of equipment. His cost is the same. So it makes a lot of sense today to have a big dedicated equipment. But in the future, I can see when autonomous vehicles start becoming prevalent that it may make sense to go to multiple smaller vehicles. The next bullet is the current wheeled vehicles have challenges. Usually they have a fairly high center of gravity, so they're kind of tippy sort of. don't really handle well on rough terrain or inclines and declines. Um, some of the vehicles in particularly that we're focusing on, which are more the side by sides or four, four, 4x4s, um, they typically have smaller wheels and really don't handle sand or snow or mud very well. So it's kind of a wheel type issue. Next, the lack of versatility and multi-use small form factors type products, particularly the eco-friendly vehicle that supports the ag net zero carbon footprint. And I've been told that that's a huge issue in Europe, and it's rapidly becoming an issue in the US. So those are the problem points that we're focusing on our products. Going forward, here's several different applications of the product that we're looking at. The one on the left for agriculture, that's the base unit with basically a sidewalls around the top to keep products from rolling off, whether you put the apples, in this case, in a basket, or you could just put them on the top of the unit. And then with a lift product, you can easily get up to where the apples are. We're kind of focusing in the short term for orchards, whether it's apples, oranges, pears, any of those kind of fruits, and organic farming like pumpkin patches would be pretty easy to put pumpkins on top of a product like this. Going forward, there's other applications that this vehicle will be applicable. I'll show that in just a minute here. First, I want to talk about a couple other applications that are kind of related, more of the rural or backwoods type areas. A search and rescue vehicle where this vehicle would be able to go cross country through snow. Hopefully, my view would be that any place that a mule could go, this vehicle could go. That's kind of my ultimate goal for search and rescue. And then onto the firefighting unit. That vehicle, you can drive it internally, or any of these vehicles you can drive internally, controlled by wire, or if you want to be external to the vehicle, they're fully remote control. And so you can actually drive the vehicle and control the firefighting water nozzles via remote control. Why is that important? Well, if you're in a forest fire, and being in a vehicle, you're within feet of the fire. Now, if there's a fire blow by, or a flare up, you're in the middle of the fire. To me, it would make a lot of sense to have a remote controlled vehicle where you can be hundreds or maybe 1,000 yards away from the fire. You have cameras on board this vehicle, and you can drive it right up to where you need to be and put out forest fires. So that's kind of our plans going forward. And autonomous, hopefully eventually we'll be able to do autonomous type vehicles. We're talking remote control up front immediately. And just like in the automotive industry, autonomous vehicles is the wave of the future. And one of the, I was on a webinar just a few weeks ago, and the comment was that vehicles 5 years ago had about 1 to 2 million lines of code. Vehicles today have about 20 million lines of code. 5 years from now, when autonomous vehicles start coming out, they will have 200 million lines of code. And that's how fast the software side of vehicles in general are exploding. So if you remember last time when I presented, I was talking quite a bit about software-defined vehicles. We spent quite a bit of time talking about that. And now you can see where, just from a line of code, how rapidly that is exploding. All right, so another feature that we have on this vehicle, what's really important, another person much wiser than me highly recommended putting in a 3-point hitch and power takeoff on this vehicle. So I said, okay, well, I come up with a way to do a 3-point hitch accessory. It basically plugs in, and standard off-the-shelf implements, category 1 implements, will link up to this vehicle. And you know, because I didn't want to go with a custom mechanical interconnect for these implements. I wanted that to be standard off-the-shelf type interface. And so I said, okay, well, I'll do that. Here's a 3-point hitch. And then I said, well, maybe I could do one-upsmanship here. Okay, let's put a 3-point hitch and a power takeoff on these applications. And oh yeah, by the way, let's make it capable of either going in the front or the back. So now you got regular off-the-shelf implements. You got power takeoff. You can run a power takeoff on the front of the vehicle, or you can run power takeoff on the back of the vehicle. There's examples of several types of implements that could be run on that. And the latest thing is we're looking at the probability or possibility of being able to run both of those simultaneously. So that's kind of where we're heading. Here's a few more of the implements that we're looking at, trying to determine horsepower, loads, and all of that kind of technical stuff. So that's kind of the powered units, but you can buy this 3-point hitch either with or without the power takeoff as an option. So from a pricing point of view, you can save a lot of money if it's a passive type need. Oh. Okay, so here's the journey that we've had since my last presentation. Pat myself on the back a little bit. We got a Launch Minnesota Innovation Grant. We received that last month. So that was pretty great. Thank you, guys. Also, I've applied for a patent. One of the you know, there's pros and cons to everything, as I mentioned. One of the cons to a track vehicle is that they're usually very difficult to drive. They're not the best things to drive down the roads. And knowing me, I was not happy with a vehicle that could only go, you know, 8 to 10 miles an hour. That just would not be cool. So I said, okay, what do we got to do to make this track vehicle be able to go 45, 50 plus miles an hour? That's really important to me. So I said, okay, the biggest problem that I know of is how do you make this track vehicle steer decently when you're going 45, 50 plus miles an hour? Well, came up with an idea of how to control the vehicle, and basically applied for the patent. You know, because when you're driving, you know, if you've got an off-road vehicle and you're driving in the backcountry, if you drift a few inches left or right, it really doesn't matter. But if you're driving this vehicle on a road and you got, you know, 6 inches on either side of your vehicle in your lane, you got to stay inside your lane. Now, you know, the U.S. government or the military doesn't really care about that. For the Abrams tank, obviously that vehicle can go much faster than 45, 50 miles an hour. But the Abrams takes up both lanes down the highway, and who's going to challenge an Abrams tank Uh, if they take up both lanes, you're not going to question those. So, but this vehicle, we need to stay in the single lane, and so having a patent on controlling the vehicle is really paramount. So at this point, the patent is applied and it's patent pending. We've recently applying for Southern Minnesota Innovation Fund, Southern Minnesota Innovative Foundation loan. That is just recently submitted. Hopefully we get that soon because we are really starting to kick off the actual development phase of phase one. So what is our development phase of phase one? We're actually in the process of building a proof of concept unit of the base unit that we showed earlier. And presently I'm working with 3 other partners, partner companies in developing and fabricating different pieces of this. And hopefully in the next few months, we'll be able to start bringing some of the pieces together. So at this point, since, as I mentioned, we're heavy in the development phase, we are very heavily looking for investors, and that's really the key point of where we're at right now and going forward to actually complete the fabrication of this proof of concept unit. So with that, I want to thank a couple of my supporter groups, the Launch Minnesota for the Launch Minnesota grant, Greater Mankato Growth there. Thank you, Ryan and everybody. And Green Seam, all the support that you've given us, Sam, really appreciate that. And so with that, I open it up to any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. As we're tight on time here, we'll be able to get a couple of questions in out loud. If you have feedback that you'd like to share with Mike, please just share the feedback in chat so that he can read that himself. But if anyone has any questions, I'll be able to call on you and ask that question out loud. Yvonne raised her hand.
I'm always a good fill-in, right? I always have something. I was thinking about, many times when we have 2 presenters and many cups, you can see a connection between the 2. I'm wondering, do you see any utility in having something like Sully was talking about as an accessory for your vehicle, something that would have a button you could push if there was a problem and you needed help?
Yes, that's a good question. I was actually thinking of that myself. There's always going to be a lot of information that's going to be very helpful. For example, he brought up the potholes and detours on a vehicle like this, where you're probably going more distance than on a bicycle. That's probably even more so important as you're traveling, finding closed roads or traffic jams, or even emergency buttons to if you have an accident or you come across an accident. Emergency buttons are always important. So in general, that is something that different vehicles like this would probably use.
I'll make sure you have Sully's contact information.
Okay.
Just in case.
Hi, Nathan. Nathan, you had a good comment in chat here, and I just want to give you an opportunity to share that because I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, some of those attachments that we're showing, I could picture a landscaper using that. So I just thought that was interesting. I don't know if that was part of one of the ideas that you had or thought of, or a way to expand even.
Yeah, that actually was, if you noticed on that, I have this really big flatbed in the back, which would be ideal for landscapers or anybody that's picking up or dropping off really anything. It's big enough for a pretty good size pallet if you have wanted to load a pallet onto the back and have a pallet jack take it off. So that is a lot of the focus on that. That's why it's really a industrial application as opposed to just a boy toy vehicle.